Alright guys, so in this video, we'll touch base on 4 principles of object-oriented programming in TypeScript. Number 1, encapsulation. Number 2, inheritance. Number 3, polymorphism. And number 4, abstraction. So encapsulation concept refers to the grouping of data variables and methods in classes. Now this class A contains some properties, constructor, and a method. This much we have already covered in the previous video. Okay, now encapsulation is also used to hide data and methods that are meant to be internal and only required for the inner working of the object. In this meaning, encapsulation is equivalent to abstraction, which is another fundamental principle of object-oriented programming. And besides that, we do have interface and abstract class features into TypeScript for implementing abstraction. Okay, so to control the visibility of members, we can use access modifiers. And there are 3 types of access modifiers in TypeScript: public, private, and protected. So by default, all members of a class in TypeScript are public. Okay, and all public members can be accessed anywhere without any restriction. Okay, so a colon string, okay, can also be written like public space name of the property colon string. And now this is applicable to the members. Now, members are properties and your methods. Okay, so if we go down, we have created this object, all right, and I can access this property anywhere, okay, as per the definition of public access modifier. Now let's change this to private, because by default it is public, right? This is what we said. And the private access modifier ensures that the class members are visible only to that class and are not accessible outside the containing class. Okay, so let's make it private like so. It's that simple. If we come down now and try to access this outside the class, okay, we immediately get this error. Property B is private and only accessible within the class. Okay, so in the print method, I'm using this, all right, like so, and in the class it is allowed. Okay, now let's move on to the read only. That's one more type, okay, besides public, private, and protected. Okay, so now read only. The prefix read only basically is used to make a property as read only. Now read only members can be accessed outside the class, but their value cannot be changed. Okay, now scroll down, take this example. So if I want to update this value, not allowed. Okay, cannot assign to C because it is a read only property, but I can read it like so. This is allowed. Okay, so let's comment out all these. Okay, and the employee class that we created, okay, in our previous videos, all the properties defined in there are public. Why? Because we did not use any modifiers in there, and the default modifier is public. Okay, that's not good. So let's open the class employee and make our properties private. Okay, but before I do so, let me take a copy of it. Right guys, so you know that I'm also exporting all these code files, right, to GitHub as well, and you can check out the description of this video to find the GitHub link and in which branch I'm committing it. So it's video number 17, so there would be a branch with the name part 17. Okay, all right, so we are good. Let's comment out the previous one, and we want to make all these private, guys. We just have to add it in front of all of these properties like so. Simple enough. Okay, now we cannot access also update these properties outside this class. Okay, now please note, if we use access modifiers while declaring the properties, in here we are declaring the properties, right, we can use a shorthand version to initialize these properties properties using the class constructor. Okay, let me show you how. So I just put in private in front of all of these. Okay, like so. Okay, and now I can get rid of all these. Okay, and this initialization part as well. Isn't that cool? So with the help of access modifier, this is the only thing that you have to write to initialize your properties. Okay, but remember that this syntax will only work if you are using the access modifiers. Okay, all right, let's switch back to index.ts. Okay, and set access modifier for the property d now. So we come in here and make it protected, like so. All right, now I come down and I see this error. Property D is protected and only accessible within class A and its subclasses. But let's ignore it for a while because we first need to understand inheritance to understand this better. Okay, inheritance in object-oriented programming happens when a class, for example, A inherits the property of another class B. Now, due to inheritance, we can use the fields and methods of the existing class, which facilitates reusability, which is one of the prime goals of the object-oriented programming paradigm. Now, TypeScript classes can be extended using the keyword extends. Kindly note, we can't inherit the constructor of parent class into child class since it is not a member. Having said that, we can invoke parent class methods into child class using the super keyword. So, and we have this class B which has got this property currently and this constructor. Okay, delete this constructor because I would like to show you something. Okay, now this class, let's say, extends class A. All right, this is my class A. All right, like so. Now this is my property. Obviously this array is talking about that we have not initialized it yet. So if you are working in Visual Studio Code, you can use CTOR to create the constructor. And when you do so, okay, you see this super. Okay, what is that? That is mandatory to invoke the constructor of superclass from the subclass constructor. Okay, now A in here is the superclass. We can also call it as the parent class, and this class B is the subclass, or you can also call it as child class. Okay, now when you are invoking the parent constructor using super keyword, it is telling you that you need to pass in those arguments as well, which means that we have to accept in all these in the constructor itself. So we just copy this thing from here, come down in the constructor, pass it, and then we also have one more property which belongs specifically to class B, which is also of type string, like so. And then in here you say A, B, C, and D, like so. So at least this is not complaining. And now we say this dot E equal to A. Now inheritance implies polymorphism, another fundamental principle of object-oriented programming. Think of that like when a class B inherits the methods of a class A. Okay. Now they can customize the logic of inherited methods as necessary, but can't redefine the method signature. This is very important to understand. So what we can essentially do is, let me just take a copy of it, right? So the same method is there in class A, and now I am creating the same in here as well, and it is absolutely allowed. All right, so we have overridden this method in the child class. Now let's modify, okay, because we said we can change the logic part but can't change the signature. Now instead of this, okay, I want to use super. Okay, now with the help of the super, like I mentioned, okay, what you can also do is you can say super dot, and then you can invoke the parent class print method like so, right? So you can do that, and in here you can write anything, like you're changing the logic this way. All right, same way you can access the properties like so. Let's change these properties, and B is private, so it is not going to work like that. All right, but we can have E in place of B, because E is class B's property. All right, guys, so this is called as method overriding. All right, can you change the signature? Because we said we can't change the signature, so let's try to do so, and we just pass in num of type number, right? We immediately get this error. What is that error? Property print in type B is not assignable to the same property in base typing, right? Like I mentioned, because we have changed the signature, and same is applicable to the return type of this function. Okay, like so. All right, now we can create the object of B like so. Okay, so we are passing in A, B, C, D, and E. All right, now you could see that this B1 object is able to access property A. This property A is coming from class A, but because of this inheritance, right, now object of class B has got access to the property A, right? And so same way you can call in the print method. Now guys, this print method is defined in both the child and the parent classes. Now, in that case, this object is of class B, so it is going to first check whether this method is there inside class B or not, right? The method is found in here, it would execute this. If the method isn't there, then it will go to its immediate parent and check for that. So guys, when we say super, okay, that refers to the immediate parent. All right, now we can have a multiple level inheritance that we are going to see in a while, and in that, there's a class A, then class B extends class A, and then there's another class C which extends class B. So indirectly this class C is inheriting both class A and B. All right, so in class C, if we say then super, then it would refer to its immediate parent, which is going to be B. All right, like so. All right, so we come down, and now we enable b1.d. Now we have this error, but why? The thing is, this D is a protected property of class A, and the protected access modifier is similar to the private access modifier, except that protected members can be accessed using their deriving classes. Okay, so in class B, inside the print method, property D is accessible, but outside class B's boundary becomes a private property, and hence you see the error. Okay, so we have this error here, and same way have this error here as well, because the only place where you can access this property is in the driving class, like in here. And guys, I talked about multi-level. All right, that's the next one. An example of multi-level inheritance would be class D extends B. Now in here, class D extends B and B is extending class A. All right, so this is called as multi-level. Now this D class object, okay, will have access to all the properties of class A and B. Okay, and this overriding concept again will remain the same. That is allowed, but what is not allowed is multiple inheritance, meaning is a class E, okay, which extends A and B like so. So we get this error. Class can only extend a single class. Alright guys, so this is not allowed in TypeScript. Now abstraction, okay, now abstract classes are mainly for inheritance where other classes may derive from them. We cannot create an instance of an abstract class. An abstract class typically includes one or more abstract methods or property declaration. The class which extends the abstract class must define all the abstract methods. A class is defined as abstract using the abstract keyword in TypeScript. So this is my class, and like I mentioned, if you have to make it abstract, you have to get rid of this definition. Okay, and now what we see, function implementation is missing or not immediately following the declaration. Right, now we say, okay, I'm not going to provide the definition of this method, so I'm going to mark it as abstract like so. Now we still have an error. Abstract method can only appear with an abstract class. Okay, so I have to make this class abstract like so. Now there is no error, but down here we have the error because we cannot create an instance of an abstract class. Why? It makes sense, right, not to create an instance of it because it is not complete. All right, now we have another example when I'm saying class G extends class F. Okay, but class F is incomplete, so G has to implement the greet method. But let's say G class is not willing to implement that. In that case, to solve this, we have to make this class as abstract, and then it's not complaining. Now we have class H, which is extending G. Okay, and let me cut this part first. Okay, now we see we have an H. It is saying it is not an non-abstract class, but it is not implementing the abstract member greet from class G, so it has to implement that. Okay, so we have to implement the greet method like so. Okay, so Visual Studio Code gives you the structure of this method, and instead of this we just say return hello. Okay, now you can create the object of class H and you can invoke this greet method. All right, like abstract classes, interfaces cannot be used to create objects, right? So interface members are by default abstract and public, and their implementation is the responsibility of the implementing class. The class implementing the interface needs to strictly conform to the structure of the interface. Of course, the implementing class can define extra properties and methods, but at least it must define all the members of an interface. And guys, with a simple interface, iPerson, which has got this method, alright. So we just declared it, right? There is no definition of it. So if class person decides to implement this iPerson interface, we again get this error, and we see class person incorrectly implements interface iPerson. Property walk is missing in the type person but required in the type iPerson. Again, we click on this quick fix and see what we get. Okay, not very helpful. We have to create this function. Okay, and this function is supposed to return string like so, and then get this body. All right, and we just say return walk. Okay, so compiler is no longer complaining because we have implemented this method. All right, and now we can create an object of this class and we can invoke this method. And like I said, we can have more methods in here. Okay, like so we say void and we just say run. Okay, we can do that. All right, guys. Now, implementing an interface allows a class to become more formal about the behavior it promises to provide. Interfaces form a contract between the class and the outside world, and this contract is enforced at the build time by the compiler. Also, if you are building up a hierarchy of objects, you should introduce an interface for every class. Our project is small one, but we would first create an interface and then create a class to implement it. Okay. and already done so in interest of time at couple of places. So let me walk you through. So first pair is iHelpers interface and helpers class. So let's open this iHelper interface. Simple interface which has got a method which converts string to boolean, and it accepts a parameter of type string, and that's a return type of the function, and we already exported that. Okay, now we have learned this export and import in our previous video. All right, let's look at the class which is implementing this, and the class is there in the helpers folder with the name helpers.ts. First thing we are doing is we're importing that interface iHelper. And now this class is implementing this thing. Okay, if I just cut this from here, you get the error, right? So we have to implement that method. Now what is the need of this? All right, now to understand it, let's open our application and look at this is head field. Okay, and it contains yes and no values which are string. Storing these as boolean is a better approach since booleans are stored as 0 and 1, and searches on number is faster than searches on string. All right, yes, we are not saving this in the database in a mini project, but in the real world project we are going to do so. All right, so that's why I have created that interface first, okay, which has got that method which converts string into boolean, and then a class is created which is going to implement that interface like so. All right, now all we want is we want to use this method. All right, so I'm going to create the object in the index.ts. I'm going to do it here itself. All right, so that in my index.ts I can directly use this method. All right, we go to index.ts and import this, and then to import this have to say import helpers. Okay, you can give it any name from, then we have helpers, okay, / helpers.js like so. All right, okay, so let me close the helpers. Next pair is Isomery interface and employee class. So let me open that. All right, so again this is an interface which has got this method summary, the return type of which is a string, and we have already exported that. We go to employee class. Okay, so we are importing that interface first, and then this class is implementing that. All right, and we already have this summary method which we created in the previous video. If we remove it, we again get the error. All right, because the implementing class has to provide the definition of this method. All right, like so, and then we go to index.ts, and in here, all right, we import it. Okay, employee is already imported, but we also have to import now Isomery from interfaces summary.js like so. Now in the form add event listener, create a variable emp of type Isomery, meaning it must implement Isomery interface. Okay, now since employee class has implemented Isomery interface, so we can store an instance of employee class into this emp variable. Okay, now on form submission, okay, we are getting all these values from the form fields to construct an employee object. So we could create employee object from these values and log it to the console, isn't it? So we can say emp equal to new employee like so, and then I just cut all these values from here, okay, and paste it in here. But we have to change this value. All right, and it is complaining as argument of type string is not assignable to type boolean, and that is the reason why we created that method in the helpers class. string to boolean. Right? Error goes away, and in the console.log we simply print this employee. Let me save it. Hope everything works. Alright, now let's go to our application, enter in the form fields, and let's see if it works. So we have department non-IT. We select this, enter in the age. Is that is fine. Let's provide this value, hit the add button. Okay, so we got this. Let's change it back to IT, and this time we say no. Let's provide in some other value, and we say it like this. And let's leave the email part, hit enter. Alright, so we get the department IT now. Name is this, age 25, we said great. So it works. In the next video, we'd render this employee information in some kind of list onto the page. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.